XAPI does allow you to track pretty much anything. We have decided, though, that what we need to track is an extremely small part of that. We don't care about tracking when you did every single activity in the LMS, for example. We don't care about tracking every tweet that is related to your learning. We've kept it quite pared back. I'm going to take you through a look at the Bookmarklet tool that we've developed and how that feeds back into our LMS. Learners are doing their thing on a whole range of platforms. We actually run almost soon 3 academies based on Totara, but the LMS is not where most of our staff do most of their learning, actually. Our staff predominantly are software developers, so the stuff that they need to learn about is external tools that are part of our stack that we really don't want to spend time developing learning content for. There's stuff that exists out there. It's the bleeding edge. It changes from week to week. Us in the education department have no way of even curating that. So they go off and they do their thing. We trust that they are using their time responsibly, but we want to give them the tools to share back anything that they find particularly useful. Okay, so we have an LRS in the background which is enabling this. LRS is a learning record store, and for various reasons we decided on Learning Locker, mostly because we're a development shop. We're quite comfortable with using open source, relatively unvendor supported solutions. That runs behind the scenes, behind our own firewall, and connects to our 2 main academies. Okay. I'll run through the anatomy of what an XAPI or tin can or experience API statement looks like. There seems to be a lot more awareness these days of what it is and how it works. It works pretty much along the standard English subject, verb, object model. Who did what? So here we've got a couple of examples in plain English and an example in actual code. So that's how I get defined. In this case, we've gone for just using the email address, a definition of what the verb completed looks like, and a definition of what the object looks like. Don't worry if your eyes glaze over at this bit. We've also added in a little bit of contextual stuff. So these are extensions that anybody can put into their XAPI statements. We just put in the criteria for completion, if it's that kind of a statement, the organization that they belong to at the time, and the position that they had at the time. There are very good reasons for doing that, which I'll come back to when we look at the actual Bookmarklet itself. Right, so the Bookmarklet doesn't have direct access to anything at all. It actually works by calling a plugin into the LMS. So the Bookmarklet has no knowledge about who you are. Everybody gets a unique link to the Bookmarklet. The Bookmarklet goes and calls back to something installed in the LMS, which will then pass along the information to the LRS. And that's quite small. The Bookmarklet looks like this. So Bookmarklet runs on a web page. which means that you can report on anything that you are doing that is in a standard web page, which is the bulk of things now. It gets complicated a little bit with the rise of the app walled garden, where people are doing things in their, for example, Safari Books app. We can't track that. But anything that you're doing in a browser, people can optionally track. So at the top, there's the option to send a statement, to basically say, I have read this. You can say, if it's a video, for example, I have watched this. Or if you really like it and want to share it with other people, you can say, I have shared this with, and then select the people in the organisation that you're going to share it with. The Bookmarklet will then notify all those people that you have told them about this great resource in their email. We use those statements to generate what's in the next bit down, which is the recommended learning. So the recommended learning looks at, and I'll just skip forward a little bit here. The recommended learning looks at all the things that the people in your, area of influence have looked at. So for example, your boss, your peers, people in the same position in the organisation as you, people with the same position as you as well. And that's why we've added in that organisation and position data into these statements. So that enables this automated recommended learning list. People don't have to keep on coming into the Bookmarklet to check that. The little checkbox for the email digest opts them into a weekly email of their top 10 things. So the top 10 things that their peers have been looking at. Other things that we have added into the Bookmarklet is the shared with me section, which is the green one. So anything that people have directly said, you should have a look at this, it comes up in the shared with me part with its own link, and an activity stream. So all the statements that have been generated either from the LMS or from the Bookmarklet show up there in an activity stream format. The last bit is, I'll just gloss over this a bit, is allowing people to add evidence to attach to their goals. This is particularly used when using the Bookmarklet on a mobile device, because it does support phones and tablets as well. If you need some on-the-spot evidence, you can take a picture directly from your mobile device, and it gets uploaded to Totara and attached to a goal that you have chosen. And the attachment looks like this for anyone who's interested in the code. I've talked a little bit about what we can and can't do. So the Bookmarklet's great for the browser on whatever device you're going to use, but cannot connect to anything that you do on an app on your phone. So that's how we're pushing statements into our LRS, but we also need to get some information out. And getting reporting from the LRS, from the Learning Record Store, is a bit of a pain. In the LMS, the system knows which records you are allowed to see and which ones you're not allowed to see. It knows about your org structure. It can limit visibility in that way. The LRS has none of those smarts. If you give people access to reporting in the LRS, they can see everything from everybody. It's very difficult to pair that back. So our solution has been to build a very paired back reporting engine that knows about the organisation structure because it's hosted in the LMS, and we'll go fetch that data and show it back. So it gets limited by a user. So if you're a manager, you can select to get information on either all your directory reports or an individual. You can select to get statements on an individual position. So if you've got a whole bunch of, as we do, curriculum managers, you can get all of those statements back as well. It can be limited by the verbs that are used and the date and the activity types and so on. And that just gives back a very basic activity stream. The last point where we're bringing the information back into the LMS is in our statement custom activity type. So we can now use the statements that are stored in our Learning Locker LRS to feed back into what people can and can't do in the LMS course itself. Because this supports standard visibility and restrictions, we can use completion of this to control people's progress through the course. So in the past, we would do things like add a URL link and say, go and have a look at this. And once you click on the link, you automatically get your completion and you can move along. Now we can go and say, go and have a look at the site. Share something that you have learned. Once you've done that and reported it with the Bookmarklet, you will automatically be marked as completed this activity and can go on and do the rest of the course. So that's the final part, at least for now, where we're looping back both ways. So we can get information from the wider internet on what activities people actually are doing and are finding useful, not everything, but only the good stuff, and using that to guide people through coursework and using that to inform their managers on what their activity has been. Okay. Extremely brief, I'm done.